it's hard to explain this sometimes, but growing up, I always felt like I was on the inside, kind of looking in, like I never fully felt uh, connected to my life. And in writing and in reading and in art, I saw things, I saw people's forms of expression, and I felt connected to that kind of source, to that feeling. I saw myself in stories from people who lived very different lives than me. And it made me realize that the world was so much bigger than like what I had essentially thought it was, and that there was a place for me within it. And if I could express my own story, perhaps I could make someone feel that way as well. And so from a very, very, very young age, just because of the way art and expression showed up for me, I felt almost indebted to doing the same. I felt that that's what I want to do.
Welcome to the Female Leadership Podcast. My name is Vera Strauch, and in today's show, we will speak about the power of endings. And for this, we have a wonderful guest. Bianca Sparacino is a Canadian writer known as Rainbow Salt on Instagram. Over 1.3 million people follow her unique and deep writing. Bianca has already written several books. Her latest, The Strength in Our Scars, was published in German last year, and her work focuses on themes such as love, healing, self-worth, and personal development. And today we will speak about what it takes to grow and learn from pain, grief, and loss, regardless of context, whether it's personal or professional. And we will look at relationships, love, and heartbreak, and the power of words. So enjoy our conversation, and let's dive right in. Bianca, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. I can't wait to chat more and dive into all the themes we've been talking about.
Let's dive right into loss and grief.
Let's get right into it.
Yeah, to get right into it, yes. It's not an easy topic, and still it's so relevant in life, because we lose things, we grieve. Sometimes we grieve the beautiful things that we have to let go of. I always see it like there's something. It's a good sign if we grieve something, because there was something that is worth something. And I'm not sure how we start the best, because I would love to hear some of your writing. And I think it's very important for all the people who don't know, if there are any who might not know you as yet, to hear what you're writing about it. But maybe before you read something to us, can you share with us how you found your way to this topic, and to writing about something, about the strength in our scars, something that is so painful also?
Yeah, so the book was inspired by a lot of my own self-development work. I wrote it as a reminder to myself, something that I needed to hear when I was younger, something that I needed to hear words-wise, or just the kind of art I was hoping to find in the world when I was navigating a lot of hurt, a lot of confusion. I was young. I didn't know what my life had in store for me. I had been through a lot in my childhood, and just through my lived experience, that made me feel like I almost wasn't going to be able to experience beauty in my future. I thought it was always going to be a certain way. And I don't have the stomach to really believe in that. So despite the fact that the world kept trying to convince me that that was the case, and that I would continue to kind of experience the same things over and over again, I still believed deep down that I could make a beautiful life for myself, despite what I had been through. And that's what The Strength in Our Scars is about. The cover itself is actually inspired by a Japanese pottery technique where they repair broken things with gold. And that is to say that you can still have something that is broken in front of you, and that doesn't necessarily have to take from the usability of it or the value of it. You can repair it and you can turn it into something new while still honoring the history and the things that it has been through, and it can still go on and be useful. It can still go on and be beautiful. It can still be seen as art. So that is what I needed to hear when I was younger. And that is the lessons that I wrote in the book, because I hadn't found anything that spoke to me and my heart and my lived experience the way that I needed. So that is the inspiration behind the book. That's why it's called what it's called. That's why it looks the way it looks. But yeah, it's a love letter to myself and a love letter to the history that created the person that I am.
Is there any particular text that you maybe sometimes return to?
In reference to text in the book?
In the book, yeah.
In general? Yeah, so there's a poem in there that talks about being the kind of person. There's two, actually. So there's a poem in there that speaks to being the person who cares, no matter what. Having the kind of heart that believes in others, that believes in goodness, wanting to be the kind of person in this world who encourages that kind of connection and who encourages others to believe that people like that exist. And as I was saying, despite anything that we have been through, if we can just continue to be that kind of person, to be the person who cares, to be the person who connects, to be the person who expresses and has gratitude, maybe we can heal the world day by day through our own small lived experiences and actions. And then the second one that I often go to is it speaks about the belief that some of the kindest people we come into contact with in this world and in this life are people who were not necessarily born that way, but they were made just through the things that they have been through. So it's often the kindest people that you encounter every single day that know what it feels like to have the world be not so kind to them. And that is a mindfulness thing that they carry with them throughout their life. And that is why you encounter souls like that, because they are trying their hardest every single day to be the kind of person who adds that kind of hopefulness into the world. So those are two poems within that book that really resonate with me and that I continue to try to emulate and share as much as possible.
Would you read one to us?
I would love to. I have my book here. Yes, of course. I just have to find them. I would have bookmarked these, but
I didn't send it in our preparation. So
oh, that is so fine. I actually love a little surprise from time to time.
That's kind to say.
We both know, me frantically trying to get my technology to work today. But let's see. Be the person who cares. Be the person who makes the effort. The person who loves without hesitation. Be the person who bears it all. The person who never shies away from the depth of their feeling or the intensity of their hope. Be the person who believes in the softness of the world, in the goodness of other people, in the beauty of being open and untethered and trusting. Be the person who takes the chance, who refuses to hide. Be the person who makes people feel seen, the person who shows up. Trust me when I say be the person who cares, because the world doesn't need any more carelessness, any more disregard, because there is nothing stronger than someone who continues to stay soft in a world that hasn't always been kind to them. That's the first one.
I love it.
Thank you. It's one of my favorite poems, and it's really beautiful because that is one of the poems that so many people resonate with. I could share it a billion times over, and I will get different responses each time. People will message me and they'll say, I read this when I was 15 and it found me again when I was 20, and I have such a different perspective of it, but it still kind of hits that that like thread of humanity in them. And it's like one of the biggest compliments for a writer. It's like the most precious thing you can hear. So yeah.
And you know what, we in our leadership work, we in the academy, because we have a female leadership academy, and we have this we have like stickers and even socks like merch.
I love that.
With you know,
so
with
cute.
yeah, and we have it with and our the phrase is warm is the new cool.
Oh, I love that.
And I love the saying. I read it, I don't know, years ago, only the strong stay soft, which is almost the same phrasing or very similar to what you were ending with. And I think especially for people who carry a lot of responsibility, and that can look very differently, but it's also something that you experience in jobs. It is so important once you have power, it's so important to stay connected to your soft side and, to truly care about people. And it's so easy to get, with all the responsibility, to just lose sight of it. Yeah. And it's the work to stay soft. So it also resonates with me in terms of being warm and soft.
It's very easy. I find that people think that it is so easy to be like a kind person or to stay soft despite what you've been through, but it takes mental energy every single day to remind yourself that you don't necessarily want to go back to like the darkness, or despite the fact that it would be easier to just stop caring, which is the funny thing. And when I'm talking about it, it's actually the opposite. It's easy to be indifferent. It's easy to say you don't care. It's so easy to be the kind of person who only thinks about yourself, and who just goes through this world only worrying about your own actions. But to be the person who has gone through things and who still mentally thinks to take care of others, to not believe that they should be hard in this world, despite what it has, put them through, that takes so much work, so much energy, so much labor, and it's not the easiest thing in the world, and it's not a weakness either. It's actually like a very incredible form of strength. So I agree with everything you just said. I also found the second poem, if you would like me to read it.
Please.
Okay. Perfect. Yes. which segues perfectly into this poem, because this is literally summing up exactly what we just talked about. So all right, it goes. Some of the kindest souls I know have lived in a world that was not so kind to them. Some of the best human beings I know have been through so much at the hands of others, and they still love deeply. They still care. Sometimes it's the people who have been hurt the most who refuse to be hardened in this world, because they would never want to make another person feel the same way they have felt. And if that isn't something to be in awe of, I don't know what is. That's my second favorite poem from this book.
It's so hopeful. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because especially once you are experiencing hard stuff, as it said, it is even more, I think, so important for those who are experiencing hard stuff right now to have hope. And it's so
my heart.
Talking about loss and being heartbroken, whatsoever the reason, there are whenever you love something, and this can be a person, it can be maybe a situation, it can be a circumstance of your life, it can be also a job maybe, or something, a team. Once we look into the work world, one thing is that you finish something yourself. We could also talk about that. But the other thing is if someone terminates, or the circumstances or even other people terminate something that you cherish so much. And I've been thinking about that a lot, how to deal with that. And I think also what you shared with us is something that gives hope and perspective, also from that standpoint. But what are your thoughts on that?
Loss is so hard. Oh gosh, it is so incredibly hard. And I have a lot of thoughts on it. I know we only have an hour, so I will try to organize them as nicely as possible. I think that firstly, I really genuinely do believe that there are factors that we don't necessarily see in a moment in time that take things out of our life in order to nudge us or prepare us for better things to find us. And I understand that that's sentiment that a lot of people hear, but when you're in the thick of it, like when you're kind of in a moment of grieving the potential of a future that you thought you had access to, you can kind of hear that and be like, no, like, this is what I want. Don't say that. Like, that's not helpful. So, I will say though that time, always kind of reveals why certain things had to happen the way that they have to happen. And if there's anything that you can take from that, it's to have radical acceptance for the things that have left your life, and to, understand that something greater is being prepared to take its place. Loss is something that I think every single person in this world will deal with. I think that we will all be obliterated by sadness and grief and the emotions that come with that, whether that be through losing a loved one, or seeing your favorite people turn into strangers, or having an idea of the person you are becoming in reference to the career goals you had, or the projects you were working on, or the art that you were hoping to bring into this world, and then having to like lay that hope down and kind of walk away from it. It's devastating. It's unbelievably devastating. And the best thing that I ever learned when dealing with those emotions was that we don't have to rush them out the door, and we don't have to try to tie them up really neatly and nicely and make them things that we're like, oh, okay, yes, wonderful. It's painful, it's hard, it's gritty, it's messy. All growth is, and it's okay to sit in those emotions. And when we allow those things to wash over us, I think that's when we really start to center ourselves within the healing of those things and the grieving of those things. And that is how we essentially let them go. And that is essentially how we grow into stronger people. And we start to change our perspective. And we start to see that anything that has left our life just was not meant to be there, just was not meant to create roots, was not meant to connect. And I really do believe that anything that is real can't be threatened. So if you have lost love, there is something so much deeper out there for you, and you will see it, and we always do. If you're being asked to step outside of your career, or if you're being asked to lay a project down or to take a step back, then there is something else that you're meant to be channeling right now, something far greater, or something that is more aligned with your higher limit or higher self. And if anything at all, you can just tell yourself that each day until you actually believe it. Because when you're in it, I know you don't believe it, but if you can just continue to honor that and to believe in that, then when it does arrive, and you go, oh, that's why that person had to walk out of my life. That's why I had to stop doing that project and take care of myself and not burn myself out, so that I could have my great idea, so I could start my great project. That just confirms it all, right? And then it allows us to grow as people, because it then helps us to kind of strengthen that belief in the future when these things happen again, because, we're on a lifelong journey, and we are consistently going to be dealing with these pockets of beauty and also these pockets of pain. And if we can just tuck those revelations and those moments of peacefulness or happiness or joy into ourselves for safekeeping, when those hard times do happen, we can remind ourselves, I've been here before, I have felt this before, and I was also able to, after all of that, experience joy and laugh with someone I love and kiss the face of someone I care about, and create a project that I'm proud of, and that, channels every essence of art that I want to put into this world. And, the inverse always exists, is what I'm trying to say. And that's something worth believing in, and something that I think a lot of us can testify to.
Sitting with this feeling and the grief is hard.
It's so hard.
I think it's also hard for me, because sometimes I've experienced that it's like it's pulling you down, and maybe there's fear of not finding a way out once I really let myself in, you know? And I think that's a legitimate fear. Do you have experiences or thoughts on what strategies are to find a way out?
Yeah, it's very difficult to allow yourself to lean into unraveling, right? Because if you think about the way that we are uh, told how to deal with things, especially in this generation, especially as women, we are told that we have to keep everything together. We are told that things have to be very neatly organized, that, well, it'll be this way and you'll get over it eventually and it'll be fine. So just keep going. And we don't often give ourselves permission to unravel and to be a little disorganized and to have an experience be unvarnished. And it's scary because it's so unmeasurable, right? Like um, we are meaning making machines as human beings, and we have been told that we have to approach things in certain ways. And when you deal with something like this, it kind of causes you to be in a tailspin, and you don't know what you're going to find when you really lean into, you know, the deepest corners of your heart or your soul or your mind. And you don't know how long it's going to take. And we all want to know those things. If I could tell everyone in the world that healing takes 7 to 10 business days and you just have to read this book and write this journal prompt, then, the world might be a better place, but it's just not life. So it doesn't work like that. And so that's what's so scary about it. Just to preface my answer, it's so understandable to kind of want to recoil from that experience and to say, no, I'll go on a trip or I'll try to escape this. Because sitting with these things is like, it takes a great amount of strength. It takes an incredible amount of courage as well. And so I would say that if you have gotten to the point where you can actually allow yourself to be in that space, you find your way back into your heart, even when you don't want to look at the broken pieces, or I always say you like unravel yourself and take all the pieces out and you lay them on the kitchen floor and you like look at everything. It's hard to do. It's hard to see the pain. But it's like the most important thing you'll do for yourself. And I think that's what we have to remind ourselves, that wherever we go, there we are. And there are things that we can do that will absolve us of having to deal with our grief. There are things we can do that will distract us. The world gives us an incredible amount of opportunity with social media, with entertainment, with other human beings, to use them as channels of distraction rather than to go into a channel of healing and to really be alone with ourselves and to be alone with our thoughts and the darkness that might come from that. So it's very easy. And I think that if there's any part of yourself that wants to lean into that easiness, firstly, it's okay. You don't have to vilify yourself for the ways in which you are trying to absolve yourself of sadness. It's not a very fun experience. I don't know anyone who's like, yeah, I'm ready for that. Let's go. But I always remind myself that I'm doing myself a great disservice when I try to outrun what I'm feeling, and that there will eventually be a moment in time where I can't run any longer. And even if I reach my destination, this part of myself that feels like it's fine and okay, I didn't actually have to deal with it in the way that I thought I did. The minute you just like let your shoulders down and exhale, it will all come up. It will all come up again. So whether you do that immediately or in 4 weeks or in 2 years, it will always find you. And I think it is so incredibly important to show up for what you're feeling so that it doesn't continue to use you as a channel to sabotage yourself or hurt others. The faster you lean into yourself and the faster you start that process, the deeper your healing will be. And you will always have to start. You can try to disconnect from it as much as possible, but it will always find you. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's never going to be fun. It's never going to be a beautiful experience. It may take months for you to find your way out of it, but you will never be stuck in it. And the only way you stay stuck in it is if you constrict around the wound, and if you don't allow yourself to heal it. So if you continue to ignore it, and if you continue to run away from it, it will always be with you. And that's how you stay stuck in that darkness. That's how you keep it inside of you. In touching the wound, you acknowledge it, and that's how you heal it. So I would say that is a mental reminder that we have to tell ourselves consistently. And it's not a very easy one to embrace, but that is where it all begins. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah.
I ramble. I like black out sometimes, and I'm just like talking, but yeah.
It's great. And I was just thinking how this applies to, for me, it's like a process of, it's a practice, and it also applies to the small little wounds that we have, and the strength that we get out of it once we understand that it's not only just the big things that are happening, but also the small, seemingly little things where we can just take our phone, distract ourselves, just push it away. And I see so much power in, especially in those cases where it's not like this big or maybe very old scar or like huge topic where you should get help, and where there are so many therapeutic methods and things to do, and where you need professional help. But especially those, like the smaller wounds, the things where no one would advise you to get help, because it's not something that is in our set of, you need to take care of yourself, or it's something that is worth exploring, staying with it, taking care of it. So especially for that, I was just thinking, because it's not just, I think it's for anyone, whether you have these big things you want to deal with, or if you maybe you think, I don't have a problem. Especially then, it might be very, that was me a couple of years ago. It's like, no, I'm fine. Come on. Other people have problems. I don't.
I completely understand that. I feel like we are like, it's only the big neon signs, the big dangerous stuff, the scary monsters that we think are things that are going to hold us back. But sometimes it's like as simple as the way that we talk to ourselves each day, or little comments that we make. I was recently, it's like the smallest things that compound and can become a way in which we abandon ourselves, or we're not like fully connecting with ourselves. That we actually do have to work on these like little micro things in our lives that kind of keep us from our highest potential and from really healing. And I think we all have things that we could work on. I think we all have ways in which we can grow. And I love that you said, I was even someone who a year ago thought, no, I'm okay. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm doing great. But it's like the deeper you go into yourself, the more you realize that you can, you can always be kinder to yourself. You can always be kinder to the world around you. And how do we become those people? How do we heal even the smallest things, like putting our phones down in the morning, not picking them up, or ensuring that we're not using self-care as a means of escape, but rather something that we're teaching ourselves we deserve every single day, so that we no longer have a life we feel we have to escape from when something goes wrong. So many little things that could be under the umbrella of healing that we don't necessarily think about, because we're so, like you said, focused on the ways in which the world has told us, like, oh, if you haven't been through this, then you're fine, you're good. It's like, we're all humans. This is our first time here. We all have something to learn, something to grow from. So.
And art, like your art, is something that can be overlooked as well when it comes to healing and finding answers, and maybe not being alone with something, because you find a companion in it, maybe. And your art is writing. So can you share a little bit about, I want to come to the topic of journaling, also, but I'm so interested
so much to talk about.
Yeah, but it's a direct route. So, how did you find your way into this beautiful art?
So I always loved writing. I always loved expression. I always loved reading. I saw myself in characters. I always felt like it's hard to explain this sometimes, but growing up, I always felt like I was on the inside, kind of looking in. Like I never fully felt connected to my life. And in writing and in reading and in art, I saw things, I saw people's forms of expression, and I felt connected to that kind of source, to that feeling. I saw myself in stories from people who lived very different lives than me. And it made me realize that the world was so much bigger than like what I had essentially thought it was, and that there was a place for me within it. And if I could express my own story, perhaps I could make someone feel that way as well. And so from a very, very, very young age, just because of the way art and expression showed up for me, I felt almost indebted to doing the same. I felt that that's what I want to do. I grew up in a way where that, I had very supportive parents, most loving human, like it's almost kind of gross how caring and loving my parents are. Like it's a little too much at times. No, I love them so much. But I was always supported, but I was always kind of told, you're so intelligent, you're so smart. You have to do something with your life that is, honorable and good. And you're the only person in the family who can like break that generational line. And so from a very young age, I thought the way that I could put my care and my heart into the world and help others was through science, and I essentially wanted to become a doctor, and that was very encouraged, very, very encouraged. Like do something like that with your life, which I think a lot of people can probably relate to, where we grow up not necessarily being encouraged to become the artists of the world, but rather we are encouraged to become the lawyers and the doctors and the viable professionals. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we absolutely need that in this life. But I had that warp my passion and warp my channel a little. And so I went to school for science. I wanted to become a neuroscientist. I wanted to be a doctor. And I remember I was in school and I was in a lab, and someone looked at me and she was like, isn't it so cool that we get to do this for the rest of our lives? And I just remember in that moment, like freaking out a little. I couldn't, when your throat gets scratchy and you start sweating and you're like, it's like your intuition telling you like you are in the wrong place. And it always hits you so randomly. Like when you finally allow yourself to feel it, it's like you really connect with the fact that it was wrong probably all along, and you were kind of just trying to uphold a standard or someone else's perception of what success is or should be for you. And it was in that moment that I decided that I had to try writing, that I had to bet on myself and bet on what my heart actually wanted to do, and that I could still care for others by being an artist. And I gave myself a year to figure it out. I started submitting my work to publications. I submitted my work to Thought Catalog a few times, and I was rejected a few times. And I was very close to giving up. And then I went through an experience where I had a very heart-opening, beautiful experience. I went to London and I just let life crack me open completely. And I remember being on the plane coming back home to Toronto after that experience. And I was the girl sobbing on the plane. I was crying so hard. I was so in my emotions and so in my heart. And I wrote something called How to Ruin Your Life Without Even Realizing That You Are. And I got home and I read it to my best friend and she started crying and she was like, this is everything I've ever needed to hear. I know that you have been rejected so many times, but I think this needs to be in the world. I think that you should try one more time. And so I submitted that article to Thought Catalog. It got accepted. It is one of the most read and shared articles on the internet to date. I started getting messages from people in India and in Europe and in places that I had never even stepped foot in, telling me that they related to my writing, telling me that they related to my work. And the day after that, I had a book contract and a freelance writing contract. And that is the beginning of my story. So a lot of luck, a lot of blessings, a lot of very random encounters that ended up leading me to my writing and my work. This is a very long, I don't think you realize how long-winded this answer would be when you asked me that, but
No.
Yeah, I found my way into writing. I had always wanted to be a writer, but I found my way into this career, into writing by finding my way out of a life that I thought I had wanted for myself, or I had been told that I would want for myself from such a young age. And it was in a moment of sheer dedication to my own passion and believing that I could define my own life and my own version of success, and really just trusting, even though I had truly nothing to show for it, truly nothing to trust, especially after having been rejected so many times, to have continued to believe is what got me here. And that kind of just allowed for that channel to crack open. And now I am sitting in a hotel room in Italy talking to you in Germany about how I got here. And yeah, that's how I found writing. That's how I started writing my books. So yeah, it's funny how that works.
So it sounds like a lot of effort and strength, and probably also fear of rejection, all these expectations. I mean, it's a big step to not only do this, try it out, but then also stay with it and stay in it.
Yeah, I mean, I started seeing all of the people I went to university with get matched, like cardiology and surgery at these amazing schools I had always wished to go to or thought I had wished to go to. And I remember there were so many moments where it would have been so much easier to run back to that, because things weren't very measurable in my future. I didn't know where this would take me. I didn't know where I was going. And I saw everything working out in the way that it should for all of these people who were on their own journeys and trying to define their own purpose. And I thought, oh man, like, did I make a mistake? Because this isn't working out for me. So is this really genuinely my destiny, or is it just easier if I go do something I'm actually quite good at? You know, I think I would have been a very successful doctor if I had really stuck to it, but it just was not what I wanted. And there are so many moments, I'm sure you can relate, along the journey where things don't work out the way you think that they would, or they're not happening in a quick enough timeline. And then it's very easy to think, okay, well, maybe this isn't for me, but to continue to believe and trust that you are essentially moving towards what is meant to happen in your life, what is meant to be, and that you just have to trust, and that, you know, you have to bet on yourself, even if it's going to take 5 years, 10 years. If you feel called to do something, then don't ever go back to the easiness or the convenience of a life that you never really wanted to be living in the first place. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, but
yeah. I think for many people, it can also be a question of, do I hear this calling? What do I hear? Do I hear anything? How do I start hearing something? And also, with art, for myself, I found my own kind of art, and I personally find it very interesting to define something or find, because for me it feels like I'm doing art, but I'm not by the book. So it's very interesting to listen to this calling and be like, okay, I don't know who can I look up to, because I don't know who's doing what I want to do. So maybe this also for anyone who's listening. I'm sure there are many people who who might not be sure what to do. So I wanted to ask you how to get in touch with that voice, because how do I, and maybe this is our now we find our way into your writing. Yeah, your writing, and I know about your journaling, at least your journaling expertise, let's put it that way. So maybe you want to share with us in a little bit about that.
I have two things to say about this. Firstly, I think fear is very loud, and I think intuition is very quiet. And a lot of people tend to think that fear is intuition. So they feel something very deeply. They're like, I must be, I feel very scared of this. And so it must not be the right thing. It's like, that is when you go for it. That is when you lean into it. Because as human beings, we wouldn't be here if we weren't taught on like an evolutionary level. This is like the little science nerd in me coming out, but we would not have evolved as a species if we did not learn how to protect ourselves from danger, right? And so back then that was necessary. We were, very small fish in a very large pond. But now we have this anxiety response when we don't often need it. And we think that it is protecting us and keeping us safe from bad, dangerous things, when in reality, sometimes it's just a response that we're having to something that is new. And anything that anyone has ever done in this world that has changed it, the whistleblowers, the people who have innovated art and science and everything along those lines, the people who genuinely like change the trajectory of our perception of the world, they were the people who had the courage to go against that fear and to really lean into the fact that it could be used as a calling towards something far greater than anything we could understand. And then eventually the world catches up and you realize, oh, wow, they were right. Or, oh, wow, that was meant to be in this world. But imagine if they had listened to that shock factor. Imagine if they had talked themselves out of like pursuing something or creating something because they allowed their fear to win or convince them that it wasn't the right thing to pursue. We would be without so much beauty in this world. We would be in a far different place. And so I just wanted to preface my answer with that very large difference between fear and intuition. And if we're talking about getting clear with our intuition, learning how to lean into that voice, I think that the greatest thing I ever did for myself was I started doing morning pages, and I started sitting with myself, and I started writing before taking my phone. The Artist's Way is a book that if anyone is interested, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast have already gone through that. But if you want to start journaling, I reading that book and learning about morning pages and really holding yourself to doing that is so incredibly important. And that's when you start to learn more about yourself and you start to lean into your thoughts and you start to assess them. So instead of them just happening to you, these things happening to you, these feelings happening to you, you start to really like open them up and you start to really think deeper about them. And in writing through them.
Sorry, but we will put the book in the show notes. Her name is Julia Cameron, right?
Yes.
Is it Julia?
Yes.
Yeah. The Artist's Way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
Yeah, so just in sitting with those feelings and in really genuinely like not having any distractions around you. So right when you wake up, writing, but not thinking about what you're writing like mind to page and not making it into anything, not sharing it with anyone, just stream of consciousness, allowing it to flow out of you. You have no idea how much you learn about yourself and how quickly you connect with a deeper part of yourself when you do that. So much comes out. So much understanding is bred and fostered in those moments and in those mornings. And if you can show up for yourself and have the discipline to do that each day, then you start to think that way in your everyday life. So you start to be a little more mindful in your everyday life. And so you might ask yourself in a moment of, confusion or disorientation, oh, is this my fear? Is this my intuition? What am I actually feeling inside? And because you know what that feels like in moments of journaling and writing and where you feel connected to yourself, you'll always know what is connecting you to the world and what is kind of disconnecting you to the world, because you have taken the time to understand what that means for you. I think that makes sense. Okay.
It makes sense.
It's like when you finally start to take the time to understand yourself, you'll never allow the world to convince you to like abandon that inner knowing and that inner feeling. But it takes a lot of deep connection with that inner knowing and that inner feeling to be able to hold on to it in moments where it's challenged. And morning pages and journaling, genuinely the one way that I found my way back into my mind, back into my heart, and not just found my way back into it, but experienced a deeper layer of it in a way that rooted me and threads me to myself every single day. Even in the noise of the world, I come back to those moments I spend with myself each morning, and I'm grounded. So
thank you so much. I'm very much looking forward to next week's episode. Yeah, and have a good time. Hear you next week. Alles Liebe, deine Vera. And yeah, very beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Our time is
getting a phone call.
Yeah, genau. We're wrapping this up.
Hilarious that is happening. I apologize.
No, but our time is up. So this is the wake up call. Thank you so much for your work and your time and for sharing all of this with us. And I just wish you all the best. We will put your book, The Strength in Our Scars, in the show notes. And I just thank you so much and all the best to Italy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Apologies about the phone going off in the background, but I love this conversation. I appreciate you having me on here. And I hope you have a beautiful day. And thank you for this very insightful, beautiful conversation. I love sharing space with people this way. So.
Thanks. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did, and you will find all the links regarding Bianca, her work, her books, her Instagram, but also the resources that we spoke about in the show notes to this episode on our website. Just click on the link that you'll find in your podcast player and you will be directed directly to our website, and there we will put everything, all the resources for you. Please feel also free to share this podcast, maybe with people who might not understand the German episodes. That's why we are doing them fully in English. Please feel also free to share it with German-speaking people. This is what makes our work possible, that many people follow it, that they share it, that they also comment on it and leave us a 5-star review. It helps our work though. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for listening. I'm very much looking forward to next week's episode, and have a good time. Hear you next week.